Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, holidays, yada yada yada, whatever. That's why haven't gotten around to anything because the holidays got a hold of me. So I decided to go ahead and get one more review in before the calendar falls off my wall and dies because it won't be needed anymore. But I decided to bring in the new year with the new season. So Mighty Morphin's gonna have to wait a little bit. My new season, I mean Megaforce. I decided to go ahead and get it out of the way because it's been, what, about a month now since it ended, and I wanted to give it some time to cool and let the crap storm secede a little bit, even though it's still kind of going for this season, before I really jumped in and talked about it. So, I mean, I think a month's a good enough cool down time for this. So, Megaforce is an oddball season to me. Um, the approach is interesting. The story behind the season is another thing entirely. And the effort shows, and there's like one little thing that shows that the Megaforce we got wasn't even supposed to happen. What do I mean by that? Well, Saban didn't even want to do Goseiger. They wanted to skip Goseiger and go right to Gokaiger. Which would explain why Super Megaforce, which is the 20th anniversary season, is going to be season 21. That alone should strike you odd. So, of course, when you're forced into doing something you don't want to do, you're not going to put as much effort into it as you would like. And it shows for Megaforce. But I'm going to save this for the end because there's an interesting little way I can describe Megaforce in one fun little sentence based off of something that happened in the actual season. I've already spoken my thoughts on the first episode because I did a first episode um, thoughts on thing, Mega Mission, which is basically just a modern day update on Day at the Dumpster. Gosei is Zordon's protege. Tenso is Alpha in the form of Wally. Uh, we get new Rangers at a high school trying to stop the aliens, Malcor and Vrak and Scyther, whatever the heck his name was, Malcor. Malcor. I'm on to you, buddy. So, this thing obviously is the morpher. It's Gosei's fat face, and just for consistency purposes. By the way, this card I've got right here is from the 3DS game. Actually, it's not that bad. It's like an arcade beat 'em up type thing where you can use cards to upgrade your characters, but for some reason I can't get the camera in the 3DS to read these cards right. So it's not working too well. So there. I want to show these off too. I want to show these off too. I did manage to get holographic versions of everybody's morph cards. And these are the artworks from the Goseiger Henshin cards too. They're holographic. You can tell by ooh shiny. Ah, I got camera glare. Can't take it. I do like these cards though. I kind of wish I would have loved to have gotten cards of this similar style with like the close up of the front of the face for like every Ranger throughout Power Rangers. But that'd be asking too much. Just want to show these off because I like them. No. And then Robo Knights. Speaking of Robo Knight, I'll get to him in a second. Because Because if there was a bright spot about Megaforce, it was Robo Knight, that's for sure. Something just hit my roof. Probably people setting off firecrackers already. I got you. Because it is New Year's Eve. So after Mega Mission happens, which is probably the best episode of the season next to the last episode, we fall into Mighty Morphin territory. Nothing happens. Woo! Seriously, it's the whole point behind Megaforce was to be based off of the MMPR Season 1 formula of nothing happens. It kind of shows, especially for the first half of the season. Nothing really happens from episode 2 to 7. We do get a moment where they destroy, no, is that when that happens? They destroy, Scyther. I keep forgetting his name. Creepox. They do destroy him and then obtain the Gosei Ultimate? No. Ultra Gosei Great. That's something relevant that happens. I think that's this episode. Let me see. Yeah. The episode before we get introduced to Robo Knight, Creepox gets destroyed and we get the Ultra Gosei Great, which is actually a really cool design, but too bad you only see it twice in the whole show. And that'll go to a problem I have with Megaforce. And another reason why I think Megaforce was kind of a forced thing. So episode 8 we get introduced to these mutant things. They were doing an episode where they went on a field trip to like a field, and Noah and Gia, Emma, which one was it? Pink? Emma? Yeah, their names rhyme. Easy to confuse them. So they went and found a, like an old power plant that was a spilling sewage or whatever, and they end up running into these mutant things that are all ticked off that, oh, you poisoned the planets, now we're gonna finish it off and poison you guys. And then we get introduced to Robo Knight, who, when the first time he showed up, everybody claimed him to be RoboCop, because he did give off a lot of similarities. He sounded like RoboCop, he acted like RoboCop, but his mission was Captain Planet. Robo Captain Planet. That's basically what he is now that I think about it. When he comes in saying, I'm going to protect the environment, he ends up blowing these two guys up. And then we get, like, probably the only continuous story-esque thing throughout Megaforce, because they end up gaining his trust. But his whole story is he becomes curious about the human nature. So he spends the entire season learning about how humans act, think, feel, and all this stuff. And you see him going from a robot that's like, humans are flawed creatures that are a waste of time and all this stuff, to defending them for being a part of the Earth he's trying to protect, to this one part that everybody keeps saying is the reason why Megaforce sucks so much. But I think it's kind of a key part of Megaforce. And this is part where Robo Knight was in a library, and he ran across this kid that was listening to rap, and then they started to listen to it together. And the Rangers come outside after they beat Malcor, who was the leader of the invading forces, because that's not relevant. And he starts rapping to the Rangers. Now, at first, when I was first watching this, I was kind of like, okay, I'm not okay with this. And then I sat down and thought about it, and I was like, that was the one theme of Megaforce, was Robo Knight slowly getting the idea of the human spirit, basically. And it went from him saying that humans are a flawed species to now all of a sudden imitating them. And I thought that was kind of like the peak of Robo Knight's development. Yes, Megaforce had development. 1 point to Megaforce, 0 to Overdrive. That's one more character than Overdrive had developed. But it was actually real interesting to see him change over the season. Like, for how rushed and, how do I put this? Kind of lazily done Megaforce was, Robo Knight was actually a really well written character in my opinion. Just for the fact to see him, you know, slowly act more human-like. And at the end of the season, he was basically forcing himself up and breaking the odds to fight off the messenger, which was something that he deemed a flaw of humans, like when he first met the Rangers, and now he's doing it himself. And it did make Robo Knight a very interesting character, which is kind of coincidental because every time I hear people talk about Ghost Sager, they say Ghost Knight is the only interesting character in that season. So maybe there's something about that costume. This thing's blowing up outside my window. Jeez. Some people. Got someone messaging me stuff. Sorry, I had to answer that one. So, back to the actual Rangers versus the aliens thing. After Robo Knight gets introduced, a couple episodes later we get introduced, we see them fighting Vrak, and he's going after this thing called the Wild Sword, I think it was. I'm just going to call it that. And when they managed to get a hold of it, it split apart into something called the Ultra Swords, and then we got, you probably can't see them up there, they are. Those are the metallic figures, by the way. Those things are pretty sweet. The Ultra Modes, which is the team-wide upgrade thing. I kind of don't like how they look, because that armor just kind of sticks out too much. The sword is pretty cool, though, but the actual armor chest piece thing, not particularly a fan of it. But that's Ghost Sager's fault, not Megaforce's. But, okay, now we got an interesting, cool upgrade. So what comes with this? Well, you get a fancy new Zord that's technically your base that turns into a robot. So they use Gosei Ultimate to kill Malcor, blow up a ship. No more Malcor. But that is before we get in. No. Is it? No. Gosei Ultimate was used to destroy the mutants. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Getting ahead of myself. They used them to finish off the mutants once they kind of hit their limit. And then Vrak's like, well, I need to do something to wait until they arrive. Who's they? So introduce Metal Alice, which is basically Vrak's Robo minion thingy, who's all about creating the perfect robot to fight the Rangers. And this is another thing about Robo Knight. She comes in and says, why are you defending these humans? You're a robot just like us. Come join us. And then he, probably at the beginning of the season, would have. Maybe. I don't know. That's kind of hard to call. But now he's standing up for them like one of his own. So he's basically like the rebel against the robots. And he was the only one that could really go toe-to-toe with Metal Alice, because she would burn through the Ranger like nothing else, and Robo Knight would go toe-to-toe with her and actually beat her a couple times. So it was a nice little rivalry between her and Robo Knight. That kind of added into his development. Well, eventually we get introduced to this character called the Messenger, who was sent from the army. This is after Malcor got defeated. Something I need to say about that Malcor fight, though. Why didn't they use the Mega Ultra forms? Well, that's because they used the footage out of place. They destroyed Malcor's counterpart in Ghost Sager before they got the Ultra forms. So it was just the flow of Megaforce was offline with the flow of Ghost Sager. Just go with it. It did make the fight a little bit more interesting that they didn't beat him with the Ultra modes. But still, it was a bit off. They should have just made original footage for that. The messenger is basically somebody from the Armada who says the prince is coming. So he ends up fighting off the Rangers pretty easily, while Metal Alice fixes Vrock, who was really hurt in the explosion of their ship, and he's part robot now. So the last episode starts. They're getting their butts kicked by Vrock and the Messenger. Robo Knight ends up using up all his power to fight the Messenger. Messenger gets weakened. The Rangers manage to finally destroy the guy. And then Vrax goes up against the Rangers himself, and Metal Alice steps in. She gets destroyed by the Rangers finally. And then he leaves because the messenger said, "You don't look like yourself, so the Armada soldiers might think you're an enemy and hurt you," so he retreats. So the Rangers are all winded and beat up and stuff. And they went to go look for Robo Knight, who was out of energy, and he's gone. He drug himself off, like trying to recharge or something. So they asked Gosei where he went, and Gosei's like freaking out. He's telling them morph, hurry up, and then they do that, and they look up, and oh look, ships. It's basically the Power Rangers counterpart of the Gorman army soldiers and the chariot horse and all that stuff finally reaching Earth. And Troy runs off to look for Robo Knight through the fire that the ships are shooting off, and it left on actually a really nice cliffhanger to Super Megaforce. The last episode of Megaforce was actually really, really fun to watch, especially like the last 5 minutes or so. Leading into the cliffhanger for Super Megaforce was actually really, really fun to watch. So a really, really short story overview, but there really wasn't much to go over here. Most of the action didn't start until once the mutants were defeated. Once the mutants were defeated and they introduced Metal Alice, that's when things started to pick up. And I think Megaforce ended on a pretty high note. So I didn't talk about much about the characters themselves because there really wasn't much to say about them. Troy was kind of the quiet leader, even though a lot of people hate him as a character and as a ranger, and I can kind of see why. Because he really doesn't have a personality. He just kind of comes off as... Actually, he doesn't come off as anything. He's just kind of there. But there's something about him that's different. At least he's not Mac. Thank God. Emma was the girly girl. Jake was the nutball, kind of the goofy, unstable guy. I think everybody could like him. Gio was the tough girl. And Noah was the nerd. So now going off the whole Mighty Morphin thing, Emma is Kimberly, Noah is Billy. It's pretty obvious. Actually, Troy wasn't very similar to Jason. Zach and Jake weren't very similar, and Gia and Trini definitely weren't similar. So I think Trini was a bit more girly than Gia was. Gia was kind of the tough girl, not Gen tough, Time Force Pink, but she was one of those type of characters. I've already expressed my opinions for Robo Knight. The villains, though, were... Yeah, they weren't like, they weren't Turbo bad, they weren't Overdrive bad. I haven't seen Ninja Storm yet, but I've seen and I've read things about Ninja Storm's villains, and they aren't Ninja Storm bad, but they are flat. Let me put it that way. They are really flat. I would put them maybe like first half of Lightspeed Rescue flat. They weren't threatening, but at the same time they didn't do anything stupid. Um, like I said, once Metal Alice was introduced, then things got a little bit more interesting because there was that whole little tug of war between her and Robo Knight, and then when the Messenger came in, then it became like, okay, now we've got a real sense of threat going on here as the Armada got closer. But, I mean, Malcor, who cares? Creepox, who cares? Vrak was the main villain of the season, actually. And he did his own stuff, but at the same time, he was just kind of there also. There were times where he seemed like he'd get interesting, but he really didn't. It was the villains that branched off of him that were interesting, not him himself. But a really, really cool way to tie Ghost Sager into Go Kaiser with the Megaforce thing here is that he is the brother of the Prince of the Armada, aka Wart's Gill's Power Rangers counterpart. They made him like brothers. Interesting little way to tie things together. I actually really did like that approach. I won't lie. So especially my friends who I talk to on Skype all the time, know where I stand on Megaforce, that I will defend Megaforce to an extent because I've talked about the behind the scenes thing about Saban not wanting to do it. Because of the deal with Toei, they can't skip a season. So they were forced into adapting Ghost Sager, and it kind of shows. And then I'll speak my thoughts on this. It's called the Neo Sabandera, which is Samurai up until right now. Later. But it was a rough spot. I think Super Megaforce is going to be much, much better because they actually want to do it. But Megaforce, I keep saying it's an oddball season. There are some things that I can forgive. There's some things that annoy me, and then there's some things that I actually kind of like. One of the things that annoys me, though, is this might be more Nickelodeon's fault, because Nickelodeon's kind of forcing them into doing like little 20-episode season things. It's not Saban's doing. But it's the fact with all of the Ghost Sager stuff that was added. Kind of like, Sky, Sea, Land, Go Say Great, Go Say Grand, Go Say Great Grand, Go Say Ultimate, Ultra Go Say Great. All the stuff that was added, like all the Megazords, all the tools, all the stuff. Sometimes some of them only appeared once. Some of them only appeared once. There we go. I got my grammar in order. Like Land, Sea, and Sky Go Say Great only showed up once. Ultra Go Say Great only showed up like once or twice. Ultra Go Say Great showed up twice. Go Say Great Grand only showed up like once. The Ultra mode showed up a lot when they were introduced, but there were too many things to be introduced in such a short amount of time. And that's one thing that's made Power Rangers and Super Sentai real nice, is that when they get stuck in a situation, there's like a good 2 or 3 episode span for them to introduce or to lead into something. Like they need something new and powerful right here, so they lead into it, so when the thing gets introduced, it's like a big deal. Kind of like the Super Shinkenger modes. They took like a good, 2 or 3 episodes to lead into that, and it was really awesome when it first showed up. And the Super Train Megazord and Lightspeed Rescue. It was a 2-episode story. And when the thing first showed up, it was probably one of my favorite Megazord appearances ever in Power Rangers, because it was so well led into. Bleh. Hair in my tongue, on my tongue, in would be a problem. But seeing how they didn't have enough time to lead into stuff like that, everything was just like Megazord, Zord form, new weapon, form, Megazord, season's over. Okay. But it wasn't really a problem with Samurai because they basically just split Shinkenger into 2 seasons. But seeing how they had no intentions on doing Ghost Sager, Goseiger and Gokaiger were basically cut down to 20 episodes, and in Gokaiger's case, it won't really hurt that much because there weren't really any. There were different modes to Gokaio, but there weren't any alternate Zords except for Gozu Drill, Gojujin, Goju Rex, whatever the heck you want to call it, that Gokai Silver had. And they just had the different add-ons like the Magi Dragon and the Pad Striker and the Gao Lion and Shinken Gokaio, stuff like that. They were just different forms that they could unlock. So I don't think it's going to be that much of a problem in Super Megaforce, but with Goseiger, I think it was the problem because everything just felt rushed. They just felt like they just burned through everything as fast as they could. And once again, it leads into my thoughts on Megaforce, or the Goseiger adapted part of Megaforce wasn't intended, and it wasn't they didn't want to do it, and it shows because this whole season just came off as lazy, but I do like it more than I do other seasons. Now, like I said, I've defended the season in front of my friends a few times. Like I was like, I like it more than Overdrive. I think it's better than Overdrive. It's better than Turbo. I haven't seen Ninja Storm yet, but I think it's better than Ninja Storm because the things I've seen and read on Ninja Storm don't look good at all. Same with Mystic Force, so I'm really not looking forward to watching those two seasons, but it will happen. I like it more than Turbo. I already said that. I like it more than Zeo, and I haven't gotten to Zeo yet, but spoilers on my thoughts on Zeo. I enjoyed Megaforce more than RPM. So when I say I don't like RPM, I mean I really do not like RPM. I have so many problems with RPM, and that season just annoys me. So that's more of me disliking RPM than me liking Megaforce. Because I could go on a whole tangent on my problems with RPM all over again, but I'm not going to. But it's not Mighty Morphin, it's not Space, it's not Time Force, it's not SPD, it's not Lightspeed, it's not Lost Galaxy, it's not Dino Thunder, even though I haven't seen that season yet, it's not Wild Force, and I haven't seen that season yet. But I think those two seasons are pretty good, so I'm really looking forward to those two. I would kind of put it in, like, the lower middle of, like, my favorites list, because I'm ranking these seasons in order, because I'm going to need that list for something later. But there are worse. There are worse. I can't English today. There is worse. Almost, god dang, man, come on. 2013 cannot be over soon enough. There is worse. There are worse seasons. There we go. There we go. All my education was for something after all. There are worse seasons out there. But I do admit Megaforce has its share of problems. And it does have a few bright moments. But not once did Megaforce, tick me off, upset me, annoy me, make me scream at my screen like Overdrive and Turbo did on several occasions. It wasn't flat out boring and disappointing like Zeo was, because Zeo's got problems. 2 videos, I'll get to Zeo. But I can understand why people hate Megaforce so much. I really can. But at the same time, I honestly do think Turbo and Overdrive are worse. That's not coming from an opinion. That's coming from an I actually believe this is true thing. Opinion-wise, I think Zeo is worse. But I honestly do think Overdrive and Turbo are worse. Even though Megaforce's villains are bland, they're not stupid, they're not retarded, they're not painful to watch. Divatox, Moltor, Flurious, all of you cringe-worthy piles of trash. The Rangers for the season were tolerable. Acting-wise, they were questionable, but character-wise, they were tolerable. That's one thing I will give Turbo over Overdrive, though, is that the characters were actually alright, because most of them were Space Rangers, and you know my thoughts on space. But the Overdrive Rangers, those people annoy me to no end. So, was that 3-0 Megaforce over Overdrive now? That's 9 more points than Overdrive should have. I think it's pretty obvious what the bottom of my favorite Power Rangers season list is going to be. Every review I have to scold Overdrive in some form or fashion. So yeah. I'm looking forward to Super Megaforce, I really am. Megaforce was okay in some places, bleh in some places. But it wasn't a complete disappointment. Now, it could have been better, but at the same time, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. I don't even have something Bokenju related to put up and scream at violently. The minute I get Overdrive Red's key, I'm going to scream at that thing on camera for you guys. When I end up doing the key set review for Overdrive's keys, I'm going to scream at every single key I get in that set. Or if I get the cards first, because set 4's cards are a pain to get. So, Megaforce is done, out of the way. Let's get back to Mighty Morphin, and Zeo, and Turbo, and Lost Galaxy. Because I just finished Lost Galaxy last night, so that tells you how far behind on my reviews are. I'm doing a quick little detour through Lightspeed Rescue, rewatching some of my favorite episodes, and I don't get the time for it. Yay! I won't do that again, I promise. So, Tuesday I won't be doing a review because, Sugar Bowl, I'll be watching my Crimson Tide beat up Oklahoma. But tomorrow I'll have Season 3. Wednesday I'll do Zeo. Thursday I'll do Turbo. Friday I'll do Lost Galaxy. I might have Time Force done watched by then. I'm not even going to correct myself anymore. If not, I should have it by the time Monday comes around, because I got to go back to school Monday. So, alright. So, I do want to ask you guys your thoughts on Megaforce, though. Do you think it was a mega win, a mega fail, or a mega eh? It's a mega eh to me. Wow, that was a corny way to